Welcome to another edition of Small Cap Power Discussions. I'm your host, Jim Gordon, and joining us is one of our favorite guests, Frank Holmes, who is the Chief Executive and Chief Investment Officer at U.S. Global Investors, which specializes in natural resources and emerging markets investing. Frank, welcome back to Small Cap.
It's great to be back.
I'm glad to see you, sir. We're going to talk about Texas and what your state has endured this month. Not good stuff, tragic, but I'm glad to see that you are well and in your office. Frank, we want to start, though, with airlines and travel. You were mentioning to me just before we went on that you had your second vaccine, and that leads us into people getting more comfortable and feeling safer traveling. Let's talk airlines and travel.
They are, it's really interesting to me because we had the stock market's always trying to discount 6 months out and anticipate growth or disaster. It's a great leading indicator. And the airlines had the first big run, then they sold off, and then the second big run is with the vaccine. And I share with you, it was an incredible logistics. It was like the Navy SEALs and the fire team doing it. I drove through like it was Tim Hortons. At my app, they took my ID. You didn't have to have your insurance. They give you a zap in your left arm. They checked you for another 15 minutes as you slowly drove through the process. It was phenomenal. I was there and out within an hour. So the data points show as more people are getting the vaccine, and I was able to get it in anyone in my house. Half of my employees have gotten the vaccine. People travel more, and it's interesting, but business travel is not there. What's really there and still enthusiastic is tourism. People want to get out of the north, they want to get to the south and get some sunshine. The only sad part was last week in Texas, it was brutally cold, and you didn't get much sunshine and water, and it was real, interesting because we don't have in Texas, like we have in Canada, huge snow plowing machines. There's no salt to go on the roads. There's no sand, so they had to shut down all the highway system, and it was just really chaos. Amazon has worked throughout the whole year, throughout the whole COVID challenges, but they shut down last week. And that was the real crisis when you heard people, I can't go to the supermarket, I can't get food, and power's out, panic buttons hit.
We're going to talk more Texas toward the end of our discussion, Frank. Let's stay with tourism and the airline industry. Deutsche Bank's Michael Lindenberg actually upgraded the entire section to a buy earlier this week. Airline stocks, you talked about this last November. You were very positive in this industry. Airline U.S. Global Jets up 4.6%. Let's talk more about what's going on in the airline industry and just kind of following along what you were discussing about people actually getting on planes again.
It's all technology. The idea of using technology for everything and cleaning, tracking you. They have new systems as you go through, and it's basically a light from a distance, and it scans your face for biometrics, and it's telling your temperature. Just to fast track the process for people feeling safer. The big issue is for people want to feel safe who's beside them. And if they know that these checks and balances are in place, so you hear about it, you see it, it's everywhere. How do we become super clean, super respectful with masks and cleanliness? And the airlines themselves are upgraded how they clean the airplanes. I mean, they're really clean today.
Yeah. Frank, do you think Americans, Canadians, do you think you're saying people want to get out of the cold weather in the north? Are people listening? Are the airlines conveying the message that it's okay, especially when you've had the vaccine, to get on one of our planes?
Oh, for sure. And AI is just changing a lot in the respect that they change how they're flying. They used to always fly through big hubs. Southwest Airlines had its dominant hubs, United, etc. Now they're going anywhere from small cities and towns in New York State, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and flying south. In fact, Southwest has a flight from Phoenix to Cabo San Lucas. That's a discount airline, and people just can't wait to get even to warmer weather.
And are people willing to accept the conditions about when they return? I know it's, for example, in Canada, it's you're heading into a 3-day hotel whether you like it or not.
It's tragic what's happened in Canada. Just the whole vaccine process with all my family up there and hearing about it, negotiating with the Chinese and the Chinese backpedal on you, etc. I mean, I feel sad for it, but and friends of mine got stranded in Costa Rica, got stranded in Jamaica. So yes, tough. But the U.S. is different. We've got to get business going attitude. We have to move. We have to find ways to be extra clean, but we have to move. That's what I like about living here.
Let's talk moving up. We'll move to crypto and Bitcoin. You talked again about this last year, Frank. Circling back on this many months later, how is it impacting HIVE Blockchain Technologies?
Well, HIVE Blockchain, I'm very fortunate. It was the first public company to go public mining cryptocurrencies. Started with Ethereum and then Bitcoin. It ushered in and attracted over $1 billion in 2017 from the US, Americans coming into Canada, and then NASDAQ companies started being created. So it was really the first mover. We had $200 million come in for institutional money. We built it out. Then we had the big winter, and that winter lasted until February of 2019, when JP Morgan stopped talking negative about crypto because they launched their own stable crypto coin. And that in the nice climate that we saw. Also, gold took off at that time. Last year, HIVE was the #1 performing stock. It was up 2,500%. It had the record profits of all the other crypto mining companies, and I'm thrilled about it. During that year, we made an acquisition in Quebec, and now we're just finalizing the acquisition in New Brunswick. So we will have, by the end of March, 80 megawatts of energy, green energy only, mining, and it's not taking energy from anyone else. We're the cutting edge in Sweden and our software of how we're with it for the environment. So we're thrilled about it, and we're still growing, and we have lots of opportunities, we think, in the upside.
Frank, how big was the, still with the Bitcoin, how big was the announcement by Tesla this week, to say the average person?
Well, I think one has to see that the world has changed in the capital markets. And what happened under President Obama was this push for crowdfunding and the sort of different ways of funding. It really never got traction in the capital markets until President Trump came along, and he talked about the stock market all the time. Right. And all of a sudden, you could see last year the millennials stuck at home. Well, a lot of them worked for banks. They were stuck at home, and all of a sudden they became active traders. We know that there 25,000 came into the JETS ETF before the airlines took off, before Buffett turned around and went negative on them, and then they surged 50%. So I think the SPAC phenomena, I think that all this price discovery of young speculators in the capital markets is actually very healthy, and it's helped open up lots of forms of capital being formed and job creation. The US went through a boom. The head of the SEC made it a big policy that they're going to increase the number of IPOs, they're going to get capital formation to create jobs, and they had an unprecedented growth, probably the biggest in 15 years last year.
Talking with Frank Holmes. He's the Chief Executive and Chief Investment Officer for US Global Investors, which specializes in natural resources and emerging markets. We should also mention more information at usfunds.com. Be sure to check out Frank's always interesting Frank Talk, which I want to allude to in just a few seconds. Frank, I would be remiss when we talk if I didn't bring up gold. Something else we discussed late last year. What are your thoughts today?
Oh, yeah, gold there. I got my gold. There we go. Go.
Frank, you realize this is going to be something you're going to always have to do when we do these interviews. This is the different hat. Great opportunity for buying opportunities, I should say, for investors. Talk about your thoughts on gold today.
You know, it's about gold. Gold is really tracking on a shorter term the 10-year government bond. The 10-year government bond is like 2% this time last year. It crashed down to 50 basis points. Gold takes off. And then in August, all of a sudden, the 10-year yield starts rising and gold starts falling. There's a very strong fear trade, we call it, of an inverse relationship to the 10-year government bond yield. So now this week, we've had a record high for the 10-year government bond in Japan. and the US. So the fear of inflation coming, but rising interest rates all of a sudden get gold knocked down. I am so bullish. This thing called MMT, modern monetary theory, is being practiced by the 20 central bankers around the world. It's different in Canada than the US, in South Korea, no matter what it is, it's all done. It's massive money printing. It's 40% increase in the money supply. And every time that's happened, 3 years later, you will see gold doubles or triples. So I'm very comfortable that in 3 years out, gold will be at 4,000. And we're going to see it like last year, it had this huge run. It goes through this correction. For the past 20 years, gold has been up 80% of the time. So having a 10% weighting is just wise. And if you have a higher weighting, that's probably a more sophisticated investor trader. But the royalty companies, all the gold stocks that are showing free cash flow yield, back up the truck. They're having phenomenal growth. They're going to continue this quarter into December of great year-over-year growth. And I think any uptick in the price of gold, a downtick in the 10-year government bond, then all of a sudden, everyone's going to fall in love with gold again. You got to buy it when it's like today.
Frank, I mentioned usfunds.com and of course your investment blog, which you maintain, Frank Talk. I was happy to see you kind of wade into the discussion, circling back on the state of Texas, where you're in San Antonio right now. I was happy with your influence and your following, that you kind of waded into the discussion about what happened. I like the fact that you said no single energy resource was responsible, and you also laid out the percentages of what supplies what. Can you talk a bit about that? Because it really seemed to get politicized, as most things do these days. But I was happy to see you say that not one single energy source could be blamed.
That's absolutely correct. I think that this event happens every 40 years, and every 50 years, we get a massive flood. I remember 20 years ago, the flooding we experienced. And then people said, well, in 1953, the whole downtown got wiped out with water from a flood. So they built a dam near where my house is to back it up. So Texans are remarkable. They're a country within a country. And the governor will hold the people accountable. When he had problems with COVID, he reached out to many of my YPO friends, CEOs, and Michael Dell was part of that. And they said, let's get better logistics. How are we going to get the equipment around? San Antonio built a big facility to basically help and facilitate 30 million people. Texas GDP is bigger than Russia. It's bigger than Brazil. It's bigger than Canada. And it has a can-do business attitude for everything it does. So Californians are moving here. We're getting people moving from New York, etc. So I think this is a state that responds quickly to these issues, and they will do it.
And Frank, just pushing back a little bit, I mean, when this happened in 2011, you're hearing a lot of discussion over the last few weeks about that. Are heads going to roll? Do heads need to roll for what happened?
Oh, absolutely. You know, one of the agencies, they found that there were a bunch of people, trustees on the board that weren't Texans, and they were on the state. And how do they relate to what our issues here? So they want to have more sophisticated people from Texas going on a lot of these trustees boards to be making decisions. How do we deal with a crisis like COVID? How do we deal with a crisis of weather? And how responsive are we? And what are the checks and balances in place? But I will share with you, like I said at the beginning, about getting my vaccine. It was like driving through a Tim Hortons, and they will fix it, and they will make it like the U.S. military is with Navy SEALs. They will just have that can-do attitude.
I'm very happy to hear that, Frank, and happy to hear that you are well. And as I said, it's great to see you in your office after what's gone on. Hey, don't forget to check out Frank Talk, his investment blog, including the article I just cited. Lots of good stuff. And again, usfunds.com. Frank, always a pleasure to talk to you. As I said last year several times, I can't wait to do it again in the same studio, face to face. Fingers crossed, hopefully that'll happen later this year. Thank you for joining us.
And you know, you guys have a great site. And what's interesting is that small cap stocks in the US and other places around the world have ignited. And a lot of them ignited because of millennials coming in and price discovery. Institutions like ourselves, will come into a position when we see liquidity. So you have to have this barbelling to get the big institutional money. You have to have it, these minnows, and that's what creates a real positive ecosystem. So I think your organization does a great job educating people about what's the hottest, latest small cap stocks, from telemedicine, it was cannabis, and then it's crypto. So I'm very excited about what you guys do as an educational platform.
Frank, appreciate that, especially coming from someone like you. It's always great to talk to you. Frank Holmes, of course, Chief Executive Officer and Chief Investment Officer at US Global Investors. Again, a reminder, usfunds.com, and check out Frank, of course, a regular contributor to a number of investor-educated websites all over YouTube. And don't forget to check out SmallCapPower.com, I should say, and their videos as well. Make sure you like videos like we're doing right now with Frank. Frank, thank you. Stay safe, and we look forward to talking to you again very soon. And I want to see the hats every time we talk from now on.
All right, champ. Take care.
Cheers. Talk to you soon, pal.